She was born into a fragile spirit that was forever scared when she was thrown into a vortex of unforgiving chaos. At age 22, she had already been through a lot of hard things, including the horrible triple threat of physical, mental, and sexual abuse. Her difficult situations made her shoulders feel heavy. During those extremely painful years, alcohol and drugs were frantic attempts to calm the storm of intense emotional pain that people were carrying around with them. When that happened, though, all of her pain was still covered by the thick veil of ignorance. In 1992, while she was walking through the busy streets of a city that looked a lot like Boston, something important happened to her. Unexpectedly, she found out she was pregnant while she was busy with her lover. It was a slow, unexpected discovery that left her wondering how it could have happened at all. She was thinking about having an abortion because she didn't have health insurance. The hospital's exam showed this picture of a woman about 15 weeks pregnant, which means the usual method is not relevant. Inducing a miscarriage was their only choice, but it didn't work, so they had to have a surgical abortion. According to the ultrasound done during these treatments, she was only 9 weeks pregnant and carrying not one but two babies. This is why the first try had failed. Somewhat sadly, the doctor's last words were tinged with caution as she slipped into the anesthetic hug. Because of all the problems that come with living in a male society, the idea that she was the only one to blame for the pregnancy made her totally furious. She was furious when the sedation kicked in, but her weak anemia often caused her to lose consciousness without warning. Without her knowing it, being pregnant made her blood sugar problems much worse, which she wasn't trying to do. Awareness suddenly disappeared on the operating table, and with it, this life. The woman floated above, watching the chaos below, and the doctor's worries about having an abortion on someone who is too poor. Despite this, she felt disconnected from their position and wanted to be free. She was pulled towards an appealing tunnel where she was greeted by an alien presence that gave off a warm glow. Despite the pain on Earth, their speech carried the knowledge of all time, giving her the choice to leave if she wanted to. The being showed her a very important outcome that might be good for everyone on Earth if she chose to go back. It was strange going from the weightlessness of the ether to the suffocating stuffiness of the real world as she tried to decide whether to go back. Returning to her body felt like being hugged by water instead of being held tightly by concrete. She was in unbearable pain and had to stay in the hospital for 3 days to get better. Unfortunately, the fact that her boyfriend wasn't at the hearing made it clear that he had been cheating on her. She was even more eager to go on her life-changing journey after learning this. Making comic book art was a deep-seated dream of hers that she followed with unwavering determination as she sailed west to California. It took her 30 years to pour her artistic expression into the complicated structure of comic books. At the same time, the close call with death set off a deep change. She has recently developed the ability to sense the undetectable, which includes talking to ghosts, feeling energies, and even catching short glimpses of confusing time cycles. A close friend calls her upgraded version 2.0. While she was using drugs for a long time, these supersensory skills started to grow. Still, 5 or 6 years ago, she reached a crucial juncture and chose to proceed with silence. Her extrasensory sense started to get stronger while she was abstaining. Something sudden happened in her life around the year 2012. Finding herself in yet another violent relationship was a terrible experience that finally broke her. She gave up on wanting to have relationships and decided to live alone. That's when she stopped trying to make a link that had never worked for her and started accepting herself. Her decision to make it after giving it some thought sparked her interest and got her back on the road. It was an amazing trip that lasted almost 10 years and 13,000 miles across America in a box truck. She spent time in nature and learned more about her past on this trip, which helped her deal with old traumas and learn to love herself. Meeting Sadie, an abandoned dog, changed her life forever. These lucky meetings opened her eyes to a deep love she hadn't known about before. This newly found feeling set the tone for all of her future relationships and adventures. Assuring herself over and over she would not let anyone into her life unless they could make her feel the same way Sadie did. She stopped using detached behaviors as a way to cope because of this obstacle and started to become more self-aware. Along her path, she studied past lives and soul retrievals and also took classes at shaman school. It surprised her to learn that she needed to go back to all the places her military family had lived when she was growing up in order to feel whole. What happened to her made her barriers stronger. She learned to protect herself through confidence, love, empathy, and self-empathy instead of using drugs and oddities. She stopped being mad at her parents when she realized she was missing parts. Her actions showed how the bad things that happened to them in the past affected them. Asking for an answer and being turned down made her even more determined to end the relationship. She had many changes in who she was and where she lived. After these things happened, she was free and strong enough to live without drugs. Psychic experiences also helped her get better. Digging deeper into past life traumas showed a repeating theme of being persecuted for being a healer or witch, which often led to betrayal and death. This realization put her in touch with the idea that people who were dealing with addiction and social isolation might actually be hidden shamans who have special knowledge from going through both light and dark levels of existence. This soul retrieval journey began with a ceremony held next to the Mohawk River in upstate New York, which brought back a memory from childhood. She suddenly remembered something from her past that she now saw as a sign of who she would become. After learning this, she had trouble telling time. She suddenly understood that to break the circle of karma, she had to refocus her energy on her past. Even her ancestors were mistreated, so she wasn't the only one who gained. After her changing act, which broke the ties of abuse, she could now help spirits move more easily. The woman ended up in a haunted house in San Francisco, where she could feel the heavy presence of a guy from the 1920s. She started letting go as a right because some of her roommates were depressed. The ghosts mostly left, but he stayed put. She then had to do the hard work of reading through obituaries from 1920 to 1924 until she could put together his story. The importance of understanding his story lies in revealing how a terrible love affair and murder were connected to her own betrayal experiences. Deep understanding came from working through strong feelings and accepting them fully. Our vibrations are in tune with our emotions and thoughts. If forgiveness wins, it can turn darkness into light and free people from shame, anger, and sorrow. In this process, sound and frequency play a complex part in making people more self-aware and empathetic. This is especially important for people with CPTSD because it helps them accept and name their feelings without giving them control over them. Getting this under control is like training a rage horse that turns its huge energy into joy when it's let go.